Hey, guys. Tonight we're riding into the dusty, creaky, and slightly smelly world of cowboy survival. Picture this. You're out on the open range, the sun's not even fully up, and already your back hurts, your coffee tastes like charred regret, and your horse looks more awake than you do. The saddle's cold, your boots are still wet from last night's rain, and that buzzing in your ear? Probably just a mosquito the size of a walnut. You're about to spend weeks, maybe months, on a trail where your only comforts are a worn blanket, a reluctant horse, and the distant hope that nobody shoots at you today. You're about to find out what it really took to survive the cowboy life. And, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, post your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little ride reaches .now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sling one leg over the saddle just as the orange-pink horizon begins to yawn. The air still holds a touch of night's chill, but the ground's already dusty and dry under your boots. Your horse, let's call him Dust Bucket, snorts and shifts, clearly less excited about the day than you are. The smell of leather, sweat, and something that might be yesterday's beans clings to everything. You're riding herd today. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of cattle need to be driven from one end of nowhere to the other. Why? Because some railhead town 500 miles away is paying $3 a head. Doesn't sound like much, but it adds up. If the cows survive, if you survive. The trail isn't a road, it's a suggestion. You're riding over cracked earth, across low scrublands, where thorny mesquite claws at your chaps. Sometimes you ford shallow rivers. Sometimes you cross terrain that looks suspiciously like the moon, but somehow dustier. You ride long. 10, 12, even 14 hours in the saddle some days. Breaks are short. You might hop down to relieve yourself behind a bush, swat at biting flies, or check your gear. But the cattle don't wait, and neither does the sun. If you're lucky, your backside just feels like wood. If you're not, it feels like someone sandpapered it with cactus. Cowboys didn't travel alone. Usually, a group rode together, 6 to 10 cowboys, 1 or 2 wranglers, a trail boss, and the cook, who trundled along behind in a chuck wagon that creaked and groaned like it resented every rock in the trail. The cook had the toughest job of all, feeding you with beans, bacon, and hope, all while bouncing over impossible terrain in a wagon older than logic. A standard day starts at around 4 a.m. You wake up, if you slept at all, to a metal triangle being rung like it owes someone money. The stars are still out. You grope for your boots, shake out any scorpions, and splash your face with water that's slightly colder than betrayal dot. Then you eat, if there's food. More on that in the next section. Once you're mounted, the day's rhythm sets in. Push the cattle forward. Watch for strays. Keep a wary eye on weather and terrain. If it starts raining, everything turns to mud. If it gets too hot, cows start collapsing, and you start hallucinating water fountains. Coyotes trail in the distance. Rattlesnakes sleep under rocks you accidentally sit on. And, somewhere out there maybe, a bandit gang is watching with binoculars, or just squinting real hard. Quirky bit of trail trivia. Cowboys sometimes sang to their cattle at night, soft, rhythmic songs, anything from old folk tunes to nonsense syllables. Why? Because cows are weirdly comforted by lullabies. And a calm herd is a quiet herd, and a quiet herd doesn't stampede. Usually. Though one unlucky cowboy reportedly tried singing opera once, and was nearly trampled. The cows were not fans of Verdi. Historians still argue whether the cowboy accent we think of today, the slow drawl, the nasal twang, was ever real or just a Hollywood invention. Records are murky, and regional dialects from Texas to Wyoming were wildly different. What is certain, though, is that communication on the trail was minimal and usually shouted over cattle farts and creaking leather. You don't just ride straight either. Cattle wander. You might zigzag for hours just to keep a group from heading in the wrong direction. At night, you take turns riding perimeter, guarding against rustlers, coyotes, and sleepy cows with wanderlust. You get maybe 3-4 hours of sleep, if someone doesn't start snoring or your horse doesn't stomp near your head. You smell like campfire smoke, old beef grease, and whatever died in your saddlebag a week ago. You've got one spare shirt maybe. Laundry is wishful thinking. Baths are rarer than decent beans. And everyone around you smells equally tragic, so you all kind of pretend it's normal. The horses are your lifeline. Lose your horse, and you're walking back across the Texas Panhandle in boots made for posing, not hiking. Every cowboy had a string. Multiple horses rotated throughout the drive, but even so, they get tired, sore, stubborn. Some even bite. Dust Bucket has a particular fondness for pretending he's injured, until there's food. By sundown, the landscape turns golden, and everything slows. You circle the herd, settle them down, and hobble your horse near camp. You shovel a plate of lukewarm food into your mouth while trying to avoid the cook's wrath. Then you roll out a blanket, maybe under a tree, maybe under open sky, and let the stars blur into sleep dot. And tomorrow you do it again. You wake up with something crawling on your face. It might be a beetle. It might be a piece of last night's dinner trying to stage a comeback. Either way, your day is off to a fine start. The first real thought in your head, after "what just bit me?" is food, or at least whatever counts as food out here. Spoiler, it's not good. In fact, it's barely edible. But you'll eat it because there's work to do, and chewing something bitter and vaguely hot helps you pretend your boots aren't filled with yesterday's sweat. The cowboy menu is limited. This morning, the cook, let's call him Cookie, because nearly every chuckwagon cook was called that, is ladling out what might be coffee, might also be crankcase oil. You sip it anyway. It's hot, it's bitter, and it could probably dissolve a nail. Still, it gets the job done. Sort of. Breakfast usually includes beans, biscuits, and maybe bacon if the meat hasn't gone green yet. It's not the crispy kind either. More like a slab of salt and fat that's been reanimated with heat. You gnaw at it thoughtfully, while watching someone else try to convince their teeth to break into a biscuit that's harder than most gravestones: the beans. They've been soaking overnight in a rusty pot that smells like decisions you'll regret. Black, soupy, sometimes flavored with whatever fell in by accident. One cook reportedly flavored beans with coffee grounds when he ran out of spices. Another swore by using dried rattlesnake tail for kick. You hope yours just tastes like bean. Historians still argue whether trail cooks intentionally kept food bland to reduce fights over rations, or if bland was simply the best they could manage with limited supplies, endless dust, and a stove older than sin. Lunch is usually skipped. You ride with a piece of jerky tucked into your saddlebag. Not the tasty kind you might buy at a gas station today either. This is trail-made jerky. So salty it could resurrect ancient Roman fish sauce. You tear at it with your teeth, hoping it doesn't break a molar. Sometimes you get a hunk of hardtack. A flour and water biscuit so dense you wonder if it's meant to be eaten or used to patch wagon wheels. You gnaw. You chew, you squint at the sun, and you keep riding. Hunger's just part of the rhythm now. Dinner, that's the main event. If cookies had time and the herd behaved, you might get something more elaborate. Elaborate, in this case, means stew. Don't get excited. It's water, beans, and maybe the last of the bacon chunks if no one stole them for lunch. Sometimes dried apples show up, rehydrated into a sweetish mush. You eat every bite, though. Hunger doesn't leave much room for criticism. And let's not forget the flour. Cowboys practically survived on flour. Biscuits, flapjacks, even glue-like gravy that sat in your gut like regret. They stored flour in huge sacks, and when that ran low, it was a bad day. One trail story goes that a cook ran out of flour mid-drive and started making coffee soup, hot water, coffee grounds, and leftover lard. Surprisingly, no one died. They just cried a little inside. You eat all this using a tin plate and a spoon that's also your only weapon against whatever just tried to crawl into your beans. You wash it down with more of Cookie's coffee, now tasting like ashes and a little hope. And then sometimes you get dessert. Yes, dessert. Rare, but glorious. Maybe a slice of dried apple pie, usually made from canned fruit and a crust more symbolic than edible. Sometimes molasses cookies if sugar was available, but mostly dessert is a second helping of beans. Again, one quirky cowboy hack? Toasting hardtack over the fire until it's just soft enough to not crack a tooth, then slathering it with bacon grease like some grim version of country toast. It actually helps, though calling it delicious would be an insult to actual food everywhere. You probably think, why not just hunt? Rabbits, deer, anything. And sometimes, yes. Cowboys shot wild game when they could, but most of the time they didn't have the luxury to hunt. Herds needed tending, and rifles were for predators or rustlers, not chasing rabbits through the brush. Plus, without refrigeration, meat spoiled fast. You could kill a deer at noon and have soup by dinner, but any leftovers turned into biohazards by morning. Still, once in a while, a chuck wagon miracle happened. A nearby ranch gifted smoked beef. A lucky shot brought in wild turkey. Or someone found eggs, though whether those were chicken or snake eggs was often an open question. Cookie once cracked one open, screamed, and never tried again. Water, by the way, was its own gamble. Clear springs were rare, and even then, not always clean. You learned to boil it, filter it with cloth, or just cross your fingers and sip fast. One cowboy wrote that he once drank from a puddle blessed by a longhorn's backside and survived. He later became the trail boss. Go figure. Food wasn't just fuel, it was morale. bad food made for grumpy riders, lazy herding, and fist fights over whose turn it was to scrape the pot. Some trail bosses paid extra for good cooks, knowing that half the battle of keeping cowboys moving was keeping them fed with something that didn't inspire mutiny. Still, most nights, you're full enough. Not satisfied, not smiling, but full. You clean your plate with a scrap of bread or a dirty bandana. Rinse your tin cup with ash and spit, yes, really, and thank Cookie with a grunt. He grunts back. That's cowboy affection right there. As you settle near the fire, the smell of burned beans still clinging to your clothes, your stomach finally quiets. For now. Tomorrow, same routine, same beans, same mystery meat. You better get used to it. The sun's finally starting to roast your neck, and your saddle's groaning under you like it's just as tired of your butt as you are. You squint into the horizon. Nothing but flat land, the occasional clump of brush, and a cloud of dust kicked up by the cattle. Somewhere behind you, someone is cursing at a wayward steer, and all the while, that hat on your head? It's doing about 6 jobs at once, and you had no idea how important it was until now. Let's talk about the cowboy hat. It's iconic, sure, wide brim, high crown, maybe with a little curve if you're feeling fancy. But out here, that hat is more than fashion. It's survival gear. You don't just wear it, you rely on it. First off, the shade. That broad brim isn't there to make you look like a spaghetti western extra. It's there to keep your ears from crisping like bacon under the sun. The western sun is no joke, especially in places like New Mexico or West Texas, where there's nothing between you and the sky but regret. Your hat creates a moving patch of shade for your face, neck, and shoulders. It keeps the sweat from running straight into your eyes, and on the worst days, you can even dunk it in a creek, slap it back on, and enjoy about 30 seconds of cooling bliss. Need to wave someone down from across the prairie? Use your hat. Need to fan the fire because Cookie's beans are stubborn? Hat. Need to swat a scorpion away from your boot or gently encourage a sleeping cow to keep walking? Yep, hat again. One cowboy reportedly killed a rattlesnake using only his hat and an extremely colorful scream. Historians still argue whether that actually happened, or if he just wanted to sound impressive at the saloon later, and it doesn't stop there. At night, when you bed down under the stars, guess what becomes your pillow? That same hat, tucked under your head, or folded inside your saddle blanket. You hold on to it like a security blanket you never realized you'd need. Some cowboys even filled theirs with grass or soft rags to cushion it. Others just used it to keep their face covered from the chill or buzzing mosquitoes. You take care of your hat. It's not just an accessory, it's your daily companion. If it blows off in the wind, you chase it. If it gets too wet, you dry it carefully by the fire. Lose it, and you're not just sunburned. You're socially branded. A cowboy without a hat is like a cactus without spikes. Weird and very, very exposed. Different hats had different shapes depending on region and practicality. The Mexican vaquero style had a flat crown and wider brim. Northern cowboys leaned toward taller crowns that trapped warm air on cold mornings. Some added decorations, a feather, a card, a leather band. Others stitched hidden pockets inside the lining to store small valuables, like silver coins or, oddly enough, dried fruit. And yes, sometimes they hid letters in their hats. One cowboy in 1871 was found with a folded note in his hat band. It was a goodbye letter to a woman named Clara. Never sent, maybe never even read. Bit of frontier romance for you, right there. Then there's rain. That same wide brim keeps water off your neck during storms. You can tilt it forward, low over your brow to channel runoff away from your collar. One trail myth says a well-worn Stetson could hold 2 cups of water, useful in a pinch for a thirsty horse or a quick wash. Not hygienic, mind you, but hey, this is cowboy country. Hygiene's a suggestion, not a rule. Quirkier use? Some cowboys played cards using their hat as the table. You flip it upside down in your lap, deal into it, and no breeze in the world will scatter your hand. Of course, if you're losing badly, that hat might also get thrown into the fire, stomped on, or used as an impromptu swear jar. You start to appreciate just how much gear has to multitask out here. A bandana becomes a dust mask, a tourniquet, a pot holder. A saddle becomes your chair, bed frame, footrest, and lunch table. But the hat, that's the king. It's part helmet, part umbrella, part portable expression of cowboy identity. Lose your gun, maybe you'll live. Lose your hat, you might as well just lie down and become part of the scenery. Historians still debate the origin of the classic cowboy hat design. Some say it evolved from the Mexican sombrero. Others argue it was the brainchild of hat maker John B. Stetson, who supposedly crafted the first Boss of the Plains in the 1860s. What's agreed upon is that the style spread like wildfire, and not just in the West. Easterners started copying the look, hoping to catch a little rugged charm, even if the closest they got to cattle was a steakhouse. You tilt your hat against the sun, adjust the chin strap, and keep riding. A gust of wind hits hard, but your hat holds, barely. You make a mental note. Add hat-saving reflexes to your growing list of cowboy skills, along with pretending this jerky doesn't taste like sadness, and navigating using only cow droppings and bad guesses. Later, as dusk settles in and Cookie starts rattling pots again, you take your hat off and gently dust it out. The inside is damp with sweat, but it's held up. One more day survived. One more day with the one thing that's had your back, top, sides, and everything in between. The hat might not be glamorous, but in this life, it's gold, Dot. You curl up by the fire, hat tipped low over your eyes. The last thing you see is a dim line of stars peeking from under the brim, and you smile. Just a little. The trail's long, but your hat's still with you. It's dark again. The fire's low. The stars are back, and your belly's still digesting beans that may have been cooked in a boot. You stretch out under the night sky, the dust settling into your joints like you're made of rusty hinges. This is home for the night. A flat patch of dirt, a saddle for a pillow, and the occasional cow farting loudly in the dark. Ah, cowboy luxury. You're not sleeping in a bed. There's no mattress, no sheets, and definitely no mint on your pillow. Unless you count the wild mint that somehow ended up squashed under your hat. Tonight, like every night, you're sleeping on the ground. Maybe under the stars. Maybe under a blanket that hasn't been washed since Lincoln was president. Either way, it's going to be a bumpy, chilly ride to dreamland. Most cowboys slept with just a bedroll, usually a couple of thick wool blankets rolled up around a tarp. If you had a little more coin, or were lucky, You might carry what they called a sugan, which was basically the cowboy equivalent of a sleeping bag. Heavy, stiff, itchy as sin, and smelling faintly of feet, but it beat lying in the open with nothing but your regrets for warmth. You don't get to pick where you sleep. The trail boss decides where the herd stops for the night, and you bed down near the cattle so you can respond if something spooks them, like thunder, wolves, or one particularly musical snorer in the group. The idea of privacy is a myth. You're sharing your space with other men, their horses, the cook's mess, and a few thousand animals that poop with impressive commitment. Noise is a given. The cows grunt and low through the night. The horses shuffle and sigh. Someone's always coughing. Someone else is probably sleep-talking about stew. And then there's the constant chirping of crickets, the occasional howl from a coyote, and once in a while, the not-so-gentle rustle of something bigger sniffing around the edge of camp. Did we mention bugs? Oh, the bugs. Mosquitoes, biting flies, beetles that have no business being that large. You slap at your face in the dark, hoping it's not something venomous. Some cowboys tied their bedrolls tight around their necks to avoid unwanted guests crawling inside. Others swore by smoke sleeping, lying downwind of the fire so the smoke kept bugs away. Of course, it also meant waking up smelling like an overcooked brisket. Historians still argue whether cowboys preferred open-air sleeping because of habit or simply because tents were too much hassle to carry. Tents were rare on trail drives. They took time to set up, added weight, and didn't really improve the quality of sleep when the floor was still dirt and your neighbors were still snoring cattle. And cold? Cold was your constant enemy. Even in summer, the prairie could get chilly at night. You'd pull your hat down low, wrap your duster tight, and hope your blanket hadn't absorbed too much morning dew. In winter, sleeping outside meant a nightly gamble with frostbite. Cowboys sometimes slept in pairs, not for romance, but survival. Shared body heat was better than freezing your toes off, and no one judged. Much. One fringe practice involved sleeping directly under the chuck wagon to shield against wind and dew. Sure, you might wake up with a scorpion nearby, but at least you didn't get rained on. Others made low shelters out of brush, old canvas, or their own saddle blanket propped on sticks. Nothing fancy, just enough to trick your brain into thinking you had a home. Your saddle? That's your headrest, and not a comfortable one. You roll it up, maybe wrap your coat around it, and jam it under your neck at just the right awkward angle to ensure that when you wake up you feel 40 years older. But it beats putting your face in a cow pat. Marginally. A few cowboys carried small charms or keepsakes to help them sleep. A lucky coin, a scrap of cloth from someone back home, a tiny Bible. One well-known drover from 1874 carried a music box that played one tinny tune when wound. He swore it kept coyotes away, or maybe just the other cowboys, depending on how many times he played it. What did they dream about out there under the stars? Historians can only guess, but if today's anything to go by, your dreams will probably involve endless cows, uncooperative soup, and maybe the terrifying sound of a stampede headed your way, which, unfortunately, might not be a dream at all. You're not allowed to sleep through the whole night. The trail boss assigns night watches, usually in 2-hour shifts. That means getting shaken awake around 1 a.m. to ride slow circles around the herd, singing softly to keep the cows calm. Remember the lullaby thing? Yeah, that's real. You might hum Red River Valley or just mumble nonsense in a steady rhythm. The cows don't care if you're tone deaf, they just want consistency. You fight to stay awake on your shift, the cold biting through your coat, your horse yawning under you. At the end of your round, you crawl back into your stiff bedroll, eyes gritty, body sore, and the ground somehow harder than when you left it. Sleep out here is like a loan you never fully pay off. You get pieces of rest, never the whole thing. And in the morning, you wake up groggy, aching, with dirt in your teeth and something vaguely damp on your socks. Could be dew. Could be worse. Dot. But you stretch, groan, slap your hat back on, and get up anyway. Because the cows are already moving, Cookie's already yelling, and the trail waits for no one. Another night, another inch closer to town, and hopefully a bath. If you even remember what that is, the sun's up again, and the herd's already stirring. The world feels dusty and wide, like it's stretching endlessly beneath you. Your horse shifts under you, a tired, patient creature that knows exactly how this day's going to play out. Long, dusty, and endless. It's time to get moving. Another long stretch of trail, and you'll be lucky if you even see a sign of water before noon. You slip into the saddle, feeling the familiar ache in your back as the leather creaks beneath you. The air is dry, but the saddle sores and blisters you've collected over the last few weeks. They're a familiar kind of pain. You don't think about it. You just keep going. Every cowboy develops a kind of numbness to discomfort. Blisters, chafing, saddle burn, they're just part of the deal. At some point, you don't even notice them anymore unless you accidentally brush against them and remember how bad it hurts. The trail is rough, rocky, and unforgiving. But so are you. The sun climbs higher, and the dust follows you like a cloud of misery, sticking to your skin and making every breath feel like you've just inhaled a handful of dirt. That's life on the trail, though. You get used to it. The world around you is a never-ending horizon of brown, with only the occasional wildflower or scraggly tree breaking up the monotony. You learn to appreciate those little breaks in the scenery. It's as if the land itself is giving you a small gift, reminding you that it's alive, even if it feels like the whole world is made of rocks and endless sky. You shift your position in the saddle, trying to ease the ache in your legs. It doesn't work. Nothing works. It's just part of the job. It's the grind, your one small part in the greater machinery of the cattle drive. Moving forward, day after day, never stopping. Unless you absolutely have to, the world becomes a blur of hoofbeats, lowing cattle, and the occasional shout or curse from one of the other riders. One of the hardest parts of the cowboy life isn't just the physical pain or the exhaustion. It's the isolation. You're surrounded by people, yes, but you're still alone. You don't talk much on the trail. The rhythm of the day is a quiet one. Your thoughts are your own, and that's about it. There's a strange silence in the middle of the noise. The creaking leather, the rattling spurs, the clink of the bits in the horses' mouths. You don't talk much to each other unless you're needed for something practical, like when it's time to make camp or help one of the horses get untangled from a bramble. Otherwise, it's just the sound of the earth beneath the hooves and the occasional whistle or cough to break the silence. Historians still argue whether cowboys were lonely by choice or necessity. Some say it was a solitary life built around independence and personal space. Others claim that the isolation was just a byproduct of the long, hard days spent away from civilization. Either way, loneliness was something you had to learn to live with, even when the people around you were just a few feet away. And, speaking of horses, do you ever stop to think about how much the cowboy's life was tied to the horse? That sturdy beast beneath you? It was everything. Without the horse, the cattle drive wouldn't exist. You couldn't herd the animals, you couldn't travel across vast stretches of land, and you sure as hell couldn't survive the endless days on the trail without a horse to share the load. Cowboys spent as much time caring for their horses as they did for themselves, and the bond they formed with these animals was unspoken but deep. There's something almost spiritual about it, isn't there? You and the horse, out here on the open range, the only two things between you and miles of open country. The trust you put in that animal, and the trust it gives you in return. The cowboy often referred to his horse as his partner, and it wasn't just a figure of speech. These animals had to be as tough as the men riding them. They had to endure the same hard conditions, and they had to learn to follow instructions without hesitation. Horses that couldn't keep up were traded out for stronger ones, those that could withstand the long hours, the heat, and the rough terrain. Some horses even became legends. A cowboy named Whispering Jack reportedly had a horse that was so well trained it would obey him with the slightest signal, a raised finger or a flick of the reins. This horse, a strong and sure-footed steed named Thunder, was so revered that Jack once claimed he could make Thunder stop mid-gallop without even using the reins. The bond was so strong that it seemed almost supernatural. Historians still argue whether this kind of connection could be achieved by mere training, or whether there was something mystical in the relationship between man and beast. You think about your own horse for a moment, the way it shifts under you, the feel of its strong muscles moving beneath your legs. It knows the drill, step after step, hour after hour, until the sun finally sets and you can sleep. Not the most glamorous life, but it's your life. And in some way, that horse is as much a part of you as anything else. Midday comes and you pause for a break. The herd slowed, maybe even stopped, and the trail boss signals the rest of you to dismount and give the cattle some space. You slide off the saddle with the grace of a drunk bear, feeling the world spin for a moment as your legs protest. There's nothing like sitting on a rock for a few minutes, letting the heat from the ground soak into your bones, and knowing that, somehow against all odds, you're still here. You've survived the morning. Now you can make it through the afternoon. You take a swig of water, trying not to think about how the leather on your canteen's strap has rubbed a nasty welt on your shoulder. The sun's beating down harder now, and you can feel the sweat beading on your forehead. It's not just a matter of surviving the day, it's surviving the trail. Every inch of this journey is a battle, a war of endurance. And in a few short hours, the cycle will repeat itself. For now, though, there's peace. The wind's picking up, sending little gusts of dirt through the camp. You let yourself rest, if only for a moment. No one's rushing you. The cattle are grazing, the horses are cooling off, and the world feels a little quieter. If only briefly, tomorrow, you'll keep moving. But today, for just a few minutes, you let yourself feel still. The afternoon drags on, stretching in front of you like a great expanse of dust and heat. You've seen this stretch of land before. Hell, you've probably crossed it 5 times over already. But it doesn't make it any easier. The cattle are slow moving, plodding along with all the enthusiasm of someone forced to walk through waist-deep mud. The horses are sluggish too. Even the wind seems tired, barely rustling the dry grass as it drifts across the plain. The thing about long cattle drives is that, after a while, they all blur together. Day after day of the same sights, the same sounds, the same smells. The steady rhythm of hooves, the constant lowing of cattle, the clink of the bits in the horses' mouths. These things become the background noise of your life, like a never-ending soundtrack to a movie you've long since stopped watching. It's the quiet grind of survival, the constant motion forward, even when the destination feels as far away as the stars themselves. You shift in the saddle again, your muscles stiff from hours of stillness, and glance at the horizon. A cloud of dust is rising off in the distance, probably another group of travelers or a band of wild mustangs. You watch it for a moment, considering whether it's worth investigating, but then dismiss it. No point in chasing ghosts. Your focus is on the cattle, keeping them moving, making sure none of them stray too far from the herd. This is your job now, your life. The trail is full of small, quiet moments of tension. You can't afford to relax for long. Even in the relative calm of the afternoon, something could go wrong. A steer could break away. A horse could go lame. A rider might take a tumble and need help. And, of course, there's always the possibility of trouble from other people. Rustlers, bandits, or simply those whose idea of the trail life doesn't match yours. Tensions run high out here. It's not a place for the weak-hearted. As the sun sinks lower in the sky, the heat begins to relent, and you get that familiar chill in your chest. It's the sign of the coming cold. The trail boss signals that it's time to move the herd again, and you kick your horse into gear. The herd stirs too, a shifting sea of cattle and dust, and you follow them, eyes scanning the horizon like some kind of prairie sentinel. You're still here, and that's something to be proud of, even if it's hard to feel it right now. Night falls, bringing with it a coolness that's almost welcome after the oppressive heat of the day. The fire's crackling in the center of camp, the light casting flickering shadows across the group. It's the usual routine. The night watch is up, the cows are lowing in the distance, and Cookie's stirring something suspiciously chunky over the fire. Another dinner that probably won't make your list of top 5 meals, but it's hot, it's filling, and right now, that's enough. You sit back for a moment, just letting the world settle around you. The other cowboys are sprawled around the fire, talking in low voices about nothing in particular. It's the quiet kind of companionship that comes from being in this kind of work. No one's trying to impress anyone. No one's talking about politics or anything that really matters. There's something comforting about it. The camaraderie that comes from shared hardship. Out here, there are no pretenses, just men, their horses, and the cattle. That's all. Historians still debate whether the Cowboy Brotherhood was as idealized as the stories suggest. Some say it was true, an unspoken bond forged through shared struggle and mutual respect. Others argue that it was more pragmatic, a group of men bound together by necessity, not friendship. There were arguments, of course, fistfights too. Every group had that one guy who was a little too loud or a little too sure of himself. But still, at the end of the day, you all had the same goal. Make it to the next town, make it through another day. Keep the herd moving. As you finish up your less than appetizing meal, you glance up at the stars again. Out here, the night sky is as big as the world itself, and there's something almost soothing about it. It's hard to explain, but there's a feeling of being small and insignificant in a good way. The vastness of it all reminds you that you're just another cowboy, one of many who've come before you and will come after. Out here, it's easy to feel like a small piece of the puzzle, and that's okay. It's a reminder that no matter how hard or tiring the journey gets, you're part of something bigger. That's the cowboy life, isn't it? It's about persistence, endurance, and the ability to keep going when everything else seems determined to stop you. The trail never ends. It just keeps going, forward, one step at a time. You get to your feet, stretching your back and shaking off the stiffness in your legs. Time to take another shift. Another night watching the herd, making sure they stay in line. It's a repetitive job, sure, but it's essential. You saddle up your horse again, and the night air is cool against your skin. The stars are just starting to come out in full force. A blanket of light above you as you ride out into the darkness. The rest of the world feels like it's on pause. Out here, the only thing that matters is the herd and the night. There's no rush, no deadlines, just a long, slow ride across an endless land where the past and future feel like distant concepts. It's as simple as it gets, and sometimes simplicity is all you need. Another night, another stretch of trail. You settle into the rhythm again. This time, you're ready. The herd moves quietly through the night, and you follow, knowing that tomorrow will bring another day of dust, sweat, and sore muscles. But you've learned how to live with it, because that's what you do out here. You survive. You keep moving. The night shifts by slowly, almost lazily, as the herd grazes and the sky above you spins its story. The stars tonight seem brighter, sharper, as if they're watching over you, each one a quiet companion, marking the passage of time in a way you can almost touch. The moon's barely a sliver, but it's enough to light the trail ahead of you, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. The silence feels deep, like the earth itself is holding its breath. You ride in silence, just the steady rhythm of your horse's hooves breaking the stillness. Your mind drifts, wandering between thoughts and memories you've buried during the long hours of the day. Maybe you think of home, wherever home is now, if it even exists anymore. Maybe you think about the people you left behind, the faces of loved ones blurred by distance, their voices faded like an old song. You've been on the trail so long that even the thought of a soft bed or a quiet evening feels like a dream. At this point, all you have is the trail, the cattle, the endless open sky. You think about the trail ahead, another week, another month, another stretch of land to cross before you can rest. But rest is a luxury out here, something that doesn't exist except in stolen moments. A short nap in the shade maybe, if you're lucky. Most days, you're too tired to even sleep properly. It's hard to find a moment to yourself in a world that moves at the pace of the herd. Even the simplest of comforts, water, food, a little shade, feel precious out here. Most of the time, you make do with what's at hand. A swig of warm water from your canteen, a handful of jerky, and maybe a few beans if you're lucky. It's never quite enough, but it's all you can expect. And it's amazing how you get used to it. You learn to appreciate things like a clean shirt or a full stomach when they come along, but you don't count on them. The rhythm of the ride, though, it gets into your bones. The way your horse moves beneath you. Each step a reminder that you're still alive, still pushing forward. That's the cowboy way, isn't it? Just keep going. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how rough the road, or how long the days, you keep going. And then, there's that moment when the trail boss signals for a stop. You pull your horse to a halt, the animal snorting softly as it finally catches its breath. You dismount with a grunt, feeling the familiar ache in your back. The herd's still a good distance away, but for now, you've earned a break. The fire's already crackling in the distance. Cookie's cooking up whatever meat he can find, and the smell of it drifts over to you, mixing with the tang of sweat and leather. The first bite's always the best, even if it's just some tough, stringy beef. It's a simple thing, but out here, simplicity feels like luxury. You find a quiet spot away from the others and sit down. You pull out a worn tin cup, fill it with water, and take a long drink. The water's lukewarm, but it's refreshing in a way that feels almost like a reward. You let out a sigh, wiping your brow, and lean back against a nearby rock. For the first time in hours, you let yourself rest. Historians still argue whether cowboys ever truly got used to the constant exhaustion of the trail. Some say the physical toll was so severe that it wore down even the toughest of men. Others argue that cowboys, like soldiers or sailors, learn to adapt, to turn the hardships of the trail into something you don't even think about anymore. It becomes routine, a part of you. A long, hard road, but it's the only road you've got. The herd's settled into their evening grazing now. The sun's sinking and the air's cooling, which is a relief after another scorching day. It's hard to believe that the world you've been riding through is so harsh and unforgiving when the sun's down, and the sky takes on that deep blue hue, almost peaceful in its quiet vastness. You glance up, studying the constellations again. It's strange to think how far you've come, how many nights you've spent out here, each one blending into the next. At some point, they all become just another story you'll never tell. The camp's bustling now, as the other men gather around the fire. You're not alone in this. It's easy to forget that when you're riding alone, doing your shifts, but you're part of a crew. There's the cook, stirring over the fire with the same grumbling mutters about how the food's too dry, too salty, too whatever. There's the trail boss, a silent figure most of the time, but he's got the look of someone who knows what it takes to keep this whole thing together. And then there's everyone else, the young bucks who've been on the trail for months, the older hands who've seen it all, the quiet men who just do their job and keep their thoughts to themselves. The world out here is rough, but there's a certain kind of quiet pride in knowing that you're still part of it, still enduring. The world moves at its own pace, but out here you move at the pace of the herd, and that's how it goes. Dot, the fire crackles as you turn to go back toward the others, but for a moment, you just pause. There's something comforting about the sounds of the night. The wind, the rustling of the cattle, the soft clink of the pot as Cookie stirs. It's familiar, and for now, that's enough. As you settle back into your place by the fire, the night wraps around you like a blanket. The soft hum of the world, lulling you into that odd sense of peace you can only find on the trail. The hard miles may be ahead, but for now, there's no rush. You're here. You're part of the land, part of the night. And tomorrow? Tomorrow will come, and you'll face it, just like you always do. Dot. You lean back, your body heavy with exhaustion, but for now content. You watch the stars blink softly in the sky and let yourself drift. Morning comes, and with it the same routine. You've barely closed your eyes. Just a few minutes here and there as the sound of hooves and the crackle of the fire blurred into your dreams. But it's enough to keep you going. The first light of dawn creeps over the horizon, painting the land in soft oranges and reds. The world feels empty, the way it does before anyone else wakes up, before the noise starts, before the dust rises. You stretch, feeling the crunch of soreness in your muscles. You've been riding for days, weeks even, but the work is never done. The herd is still out there, waiting to be moved. You grab your gear and slip it on. Saddle up, bit the horse, tighten the straps, check the lariat, and all the small steps you've done 1,000 times over. They don't feel like much, but when you're out here in the wild expanse of the West, those little steps are everything. You can't afford to miss one. As you finish your morning prep, you look around the camp. The others are already getting to work the same way they do every day. There's the faint smell of coffee in the air, and cookies already got a pot brewing, though it's far from what you'd call a luxury brew. It's more like something you'd throw at a cow to get it moving than a drink for humans, but at this point, it's all the caffeine you'll get, and you'll take it. It's not just about surviving, though. You've learned that the cattle drive is a way of life. It's not the luxury of comfort you might crave, or the sense of security that comes from a predictable day. It's grit, and it's every day. From the first sun up to the last horse call. The winds, the water that's always running out too soon. The cattle that have no sense of urgency, and you wonder sometimes how they even keep up. But they do. The open sky that sometimes feels like it's closing in, especially when a storm's rolling in on the wind's heels. Still, there's something strangely meditative about it, isn't there? Each day passes in an endless loop of dust, sweat, saddle sore, and cattle calls, but in a way that's comforting. There's no decision to be made, no real mental strain. You get up, ride, work the cattle, and survive. Every day is a repeat of the last, and it becomes a rhythm you can't break, like the cadence of your horse's hooves, or the steady drag of the day's work. And maybe that's what makes cowboys so good at the work. And not the grit or the toughness, they have that, sure, but the ability to sink into the rhythm. The trail calls for patience. It's like a test of endurance. How long can you last before you give in to exhaustion? How many times can you repeat the same motion before it starts to feel like your own heartbeat? The herd stirs as the sun rises higher, each animal a moving speck of brown against the wide stretch of dirt. The trail boss signals the start of another long ride, and you kick your horse into motion. There's no more time for reflection. You know the trail, you know the work, and you know what's ahead. Your horse's muscles bunch and stretch beneath you, and the steady rhythm of the ride takes over. It's not long before you catch a sight of something you hadn't expected. A thin column of smoke rising from behind a ridge. You squint, trying to make it out through the haze of heat and dust. There shouldn't be anyone else out here. No settlements for miles. The only other travelers are wagon trains, or perhaps the occasional native band. But smoke at this hour is rare. The trail boss notices it too. He's already pulling up his reins, eyes narrowing as he watches the plume of smoke. "Keep your distance," he orders sharply, motioning for the rest of you to stay alert. Could be bandits. Could be someone needing help. Either way, stay sharp. You've heard the stories of cattle rustlers, of lone riders preying on unsuspecting drives, or worse, entire gangs of thieves that would stop at nothing to take what wasn't theirs. You've heard the rumors, too, the ones about cowboys disappearing into the night, never heard from again, with nothing but a trail of dust and a few hoof prints to show they were ever there. The rest of the drive stays tense as you move forward, watching the smoke plume, wondering what lies just out of sight. You know the drill. No matter what happens, don't make yourself a target. It's all about survival, and survival means staying smart, staying sharp. Historians still argue about the frequency of bandit attacks along cattle drives. Some say that the stories of widespread rustling are overblown, romanticized by dime novels and the movies that followed. Others claim that the open range was rife with danger, and that a cowboy's ability to deal with outlaws, rustlers, or even hostile landowners was just as important as his skills with cattle. Either way, the threat of danger was real. And even if it wasn't always imminent, it was something you had to keep in mind at all times. The trail boss motions for the group to keep moving, and you tighten your grip on the reins, urging your horse forward, ears straining for any sounds that might signal danger. The smoke's still there, but no one can say for sure whether it's a friend or a foe. The dust kicks up as the cattle move, and the world feels a little more uncertain now. Hours pass, and the smoke remains, faint but ever present on the horizon. The cattle slow, the horses begin to tire, and you keep watching, wondering if you're about to face something you're not prepared for. And then, out of nowhere, a shout rings out, followed by a sharp crack, the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. You freeze. Your heart skips a beat. Everything inside you tenses as the herd stirs restlessly, spooked by the sound. The gunshot rings out again. It wasn't for you, but it was close. The second shot is a wake-up call, sharp, and cutting through the still air like a knife. Your heart's thumping in your chest, each beat louder than the last as you snap your gaze to the horizon. The smoke's still there, but now it's accompanied by the low rumble of shouting voices in the distance, too muffled to make out clearly, but there's no mistaking the urgency. The herd is on edge. The cattle shift uneasily, restless, sensing the danger long before any of you can pinpoint it. Horses start fidgeting, stamping their hooves as if they too are aware that something's wrong. The trail boss doesn't waste a second. He's already barking orders, his voice commanding the kind of attention that's earned over years of hard rides. "Get the cattle in a tight formation," he shouts, his voice rough but steady. "Don't let 'em scatter. We need to keep 'em calm. You know what to do." Everyone does. You've all been through this drill before, though you'd never quite imagined you'd be on the receiving end of it. You dig your heels into your horse's side and move to position yourself closer to the herd. You work your way through the animals, urging them to keep their pace steady, their movements calm. You can't afford for them to panic. A panicked herd could stampede, and that would be the real danger. You glance over your shoulder, checking to see where the trail boss has gone. He's already moving ahead, and you hear the clink of a rifle being checked, the sound of leather and metal in the morning silence. There's no time for indecision here. You stay with the herd, keeping a careful eye on the trail ahead, where that faint column of smoke still hangs in the air like a bad omen. And then there's another shot. Closer this time, much closer. Your horse reacts first, snorting and pulling at the reins as it senses the tension in the air. You rein it in sharply, your heart pounding as you listen for any more sounds, any more movement. Your instincts tell you to stay alert, to keep a sharp eye out. The world feels suddenly smaller, like it's closing in around you, and you can't help but feel that the danger is closer than you thought. Historians debate the frequency of gunfights and skirmishes during cattle drives. Some claim that real violence was rare, and that the most dangerous part of a cowboy's life was the hard labor and the long stretches of isolation. Others suggest that the wildness of the West, the lawlessness of certain territories, made confrontations between cowboys and outlaws, or even rival drives, a regular part of life on the trail. While the Hollywood version of the cowboy shootout might be exaggerated, the possibility of a run-in with dangerous people was always present, especially in the more unsettled parts of the frontier. The herd's still moving slowly, but you can see the tension in their bodies, the way they shift uneasily as they get closer to the ridge where the smoke came from. A third shot rings out, this time much nearer. Too near. The sound is unmistakable now. Someone's coming, and they're armed. The trail boss is ahead of you, riding hard toward the ridge. You can see him gesturing to the others, calling out orders, organizing the crew into a defensive formation. He's a man who's been through this before, probably too many times to count, but even he seems tense, the usual calm of his demeanor replaced by a rare sense of urgency. It's clear that this isn't just a random encounter. This is something bigger. "Move the herd into a V," the trail boss calls, his voice carrying above the low rumble of hooves. "We need to be ready to move fast. Keep your eyes peeled. The world around you seems to shrink down, each breath you take feeling more precious than the last." You push your horse forward, staying close to the cattle, watching the horizon, waiting for that next sign, the next movement. You've been on plenty of drives, but this feels different. This feels like something is about to happen. As you reach the ridge, the landscape opens up in front of you, wide and open, with only the thin line of the horizon breaking up the land. You can hear the voices now, shouted commands, rough and sharp. There's no mistaking the sound. You're not alone out here. Someone's out there, and they're coming for you. And then, just as quickly as it began, it stops. The shouting, the tension, the noise, it all disappears in an instant. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of dust and something else, something unfamiliar. You feel your muscles tense, your instincts on high alert, but there's nothing visible. The smoke's still there, a faint column rising in the distance, but there's no sign of anyone, no movement. It's like they've just vanished into thin air. You glance around, your eyes scanning the horizon again, and finally, the trail boss gives the signal. He's holding up a hand, motioning to stop the movement, and slowly the tension begins to ease. The cattle have slowed too. The herd, sensing that whatever danger was here for now, has passed. Still, your mind races. What just happened? Was it a warning shot? Were they trying to scare you off the trail, or were they trying to pick off stragglers from the herd? There's no way of knowing for sure. The uncertainty gnaws at you, but you push it aside. There's nothing you can do now except keep moving forward. The trail boss signals again, and the herd starts to move. Slowly at first, but picking up pace as the day stretches on. There's a weight in the air now, a heaviness that wasn't there before. The smoke lingers in the distance, but it feels like it's something you'll have to deal with later. For now, there's just the ride, Just the slow rhythm of hooves against dirt and the steady clink of your saddle. Out here, survival is about patience. It's about waiting for the right moment, waiting for the sign that tells you what's next. And for now, the next move is clear. Keep the herd in motion. Keep your eyes open, and don't stop until the end of the trail. The ride is long, and the sun climbs higher, beating down with an intensity that makes the air shimmer. You shift in your saddle, feeling the familiar discomfort of leather against your worn skin. The heat presses down from above, and the land below stretches endlessly, as though it goes on forever, just like the days. Every ridge, every valley looks the same after a while. You've lost track of the hours, but it doesn't matter. The rhythm of the trail is all that matters now. You've got your orders. Keep the herd moving, keep it together, and don't lose anyone. The cattle are restless after the close call, their unease seeping into the air like an invisible fog. They sense danger, even if you can't see it. Even if the bandits, or whoever they were, are long gone, the tension hangs in the air, thick and heavy. The silence between you and the others feels almost sacred. Not one of you speaks unless it's absolutely necessary. You each know your place. You each know what's expected of you. There's no room for conversation, no time for small talk. It's just the sound of hooves, the gentle creak of leather, and the quiet murmur of cattle in the distance. But there's a strange sense of camaraderie in this, too. It's the unspoken bond that comes with being out here on the trail together, working toward the same goal. Even if you're strangers, even if you come from different corners of the country, this trail is what unites you. Out here, there's no room for ego, no room for anything but survival. And survival means sticking together. You think about the trail boss again. The man's a mystery. You've seen him take charge with a calm, commanding presence, but he never gives away much. He's not the kind to tell stories, not the kind to indulge in the warmth of firelight and shared meals. He's all business, and while some of the men resent that, you get it. You know that if things go wrong, he's the one who will make the call, who will keep you alive. Keep that herd tight, he calls suddenly, snapping you out of your thoughts. His voice is low but firm, cutting through the haze of heat. Ain't no room for stragglers today. You nudge your horse forward, falling back into position. The cattle shift and move slowly, following the others like a mindless mass. You're used to it by now, used to guiding them, pushing them. But it never gets easier. It's always a delicate balance. One wrong move and you could lose them, or worse, have them scatter into the brush where the predators lurk. The land changes gradually, shifting from barren dust to rocky terrain, and then to patches of low, scrubby brush. The temperature's rising, and the sweat on your brow is starting to sting, trickling down into your eyes. You wipe it away with the back of your hand and glance up. The trail's still long ahead, but there's something else now. Something in the way the land feels. You can't place it, but it's there. A sense of foreboding. You slow your horse, your gaze scanning the horizon, but nothing seems out of place. At some point, the trail boss falls back beside you, riding in the same easy, controlled manner as always. He gives you a nod, but there's something different in his eyes today. A sharpness that wasn't there before. Maybe it's the smoke you saw earlier, or maybe it's just the weariness of the road catching up to him. Whatever it is, it makes you uneasy, and you can't help but wonder if this ride will be like the others, grueling but steady, or if today's going to be different. Something feels off, don't it? The trail boss says, his voice low, almost like he's talking to himself. You nod slowly, not sure if you're reading the mood right. You're not one for second guessing, not when it comes to the trail, but today feels heavier somehow, as if the land itself is waiting for something. And then, as though on cue, you hear it dot the distant whinny of a horse. A sharp, clear call that cuts through the stillness of the desert. The trail boss's head snaps up, his eyes narrowing. "Stay sharp," he mutters, a command, not a suggestion. He raises a hand to signal the others to pull back, to form a loose circle around the herd. The sound grows louder now, a horse galloping in your direction, and for a split second the world seems to slow down, the air thickening around you as you wait. The dust kicks up, clouds swirling as you watch the rider approach. There's no time to prepare for what's coming. The world narrows to that rider, that moment. As the figure draws closer, you see it's a lone rider, moving fast. Too fast for a man who's just passing by. The dust kicks up in great swirls behind him, but it's the look on his face that catches your attention. His eyes are wild, frantic, and his posture, rigid, desperate, tells you all you need to know. "Bandit!" the man calls, his voice strained, almost frantic. "There's a gang of them, about half a mile behind me, trying to catch up." The word strikes you like a bolt of lightning. Bandits. You've heard the stories, of course. Everyone has. The outlaw gangs that roam the trail, picking off stragglers, stealing cattle, and leaving nothing but blood in their wake. You didn't think it would happen to you. Not like this, but here it is, like a storm rolling in, and you don't have time to waste. You hear the trail boss shout commands, barking orders that you barely catch in the chaos. The herd's starting to panic now, the cattle feeling the shift in the air, and you know that you can't afford a stampede. You can't afford to lose control. The next few moments happen in a blur. The gunshot rings out, distant at first, then closer as the bandits close in. The cattle are moving faster now, their instinct to flee kicking in. You follow the trail boss's orders, positioning yourself to keep the herd steady, pushing them back into formation. But it's hard. The adrenaline is thick in the air now, and your pulse is racing. You glance over your shoulder. The riders are coming in fast, and there's no doubt about it now. They're after the herd. You don't know how many there are, but you know this. They're here to take what's yours. And you're not about to let that happen. The bandits are closing in faster now, and the herd's panic is becoming a living thing. The cattle are bellowing, snorting, moving in all directions, but the trail boss's voice cuts through the chaos like a whip, sharp and commanding. "Get 'em back in line, now!" The urgency in his voice is unmistakable, and for a second, everything slows down. You hear the thunderous stampede of hooves as your heart joins the rhythm, and your instincts kick into overdrive. You can't think. You can't second guess. You do what you've been trained to do. Guide, control, contain. You ride hard to the left, circling the herd, pressing the cattle back into a more manageable formation. You urge your horse forward, your knees gripped tightly around its sides as you steer it through the mass of animals. The hot desert wind slaps against your face, and sweat stings your eyes. But you focus. You don't have a choice. From the corner of your eye, you see the trail boss. He's already sizing up the situation. The gunshots have become more frequent now, popping off in rapid succession, but you can't afford to stop. Not now. You hear his orders barked out again. Flank him on both sides. Don't let anyone fall behind. As you ride, you hear the crack of gunfire echoing across the land. The bandits are getting closer. Your pulse quickens. You can't shake the feeling that it's only a matter of time before the herd's chaos becomes the perfect distraction for the thieves to strike. You shift your focus back to the cattle. It's all you can do. The herd is moving faster, scared now, and that's when you see one of the younger cattle break off from the group, heading for the edge of the ridge. It's a split-second decision, but you know what you have to do. Without hesitation, you spur your horse forward, cutting through the dust toward the straggler. You can hear the bandits getting closer, but you can't leave the herd in disarray. One wrong move, and the entire drive could be ruined. The tension builds in your chest as you approach the rogue animal. It's young, panicked, and confused. Exactly the kind of animal a bandit could isolate. You grab the reins tighter, feeling the power of your horse beneath you as it accelerates. The sound of hooves pounding the earth is deafening as you pull up alongside the cow, and with a firm hand, you guide it back into the fold. The animal snorts and kicks, but it's no match for your determination. You steer it back toward the herd, and for a moment, it feels like everything's under control again. But then, the gunshots come faster, closer, and you feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You whip your head around, and that's when you see them. 4 riders on horseback, moving at full gallop, their rifles held high. They're coming straight for the herd, and you can see the malicious intent in their eyes. These aren't the kinds of men who leave witnesses. You don't have much time. The cattle are scattered now, the chaos overwhelming, but there's no room for hesitation. You pull your revolver from its holster, feeling the weight of it in your hand, and you look to the trail boss for his lead. He's already made the call. He's signaling to scatter and to regroup behind the ridge. "Form up behind the rocks," he shouts. "We'll make our stand there." The bandits are upon you, riding in fast, their eyes wild, their guns trained on the herd. You know that in moments, it could turn into a full-on shootout. You can't think about that now. All that matters is getting the cattle behind cover. You kick your horse into a gallop, turning it sharply as you race for the low ridge to the left. The bandits are closing in, but the herd is your first priority. You see other cowboys heading toward the rocks as well, creating a defensive line, their horses kicking up dust behind them. The bandits are pulling their guns now, and you hear the crack of fire as a bullet whizzes just past your ear, narrowly missing. The adrenaline surges in your veins, and your hand tightens around the reins, heart pounding in your chest. "Stay together," the trail boss yells over the gunfire, his voice strained but steady. "Form a circle. Don't let them split us up." You hear the crack of another shot, and one of the bandits' horses goes down, throwing its rider onto the hard ground. It's chaos now. Gunfire, shouts, the whinnies of panicked horses, and the constant bellowing of cattle. You can't keep track of it all, but you follow the trail boss's orders without question. The battle is fast, desperate, and you feel every inch of your body on high alert. You've never fired your weapon in a situation like this. Most cowboys only carry their guns for show or for protecting their cattle from predators. But now, in the heat of the moment, there's no choice. There's nothing left but to stand your ground. Your horse sidesteps as another shot is fired, But this time, it's not directed at you. One of the bandits goes down, clutching his shoulder as he tumbles off his horse. But there's no time to celebrate. You're still in danger. You still have to protect the herd. It's clear that the bandits are getting desperate. They're starting to pull back, realizing that they're outnumbered. Their initial confidence is faltering, and one by one they start to retreat toward the canyon where the ridge meets the valley. The sound of hooves pounding in the dust grows fainter as they disappear over the horizon dot. And then, suddenly, it's quiet. Too quiet. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding, looking around to make sure the rest of the crew is safe. The cattle are scattered, still nervous, but there's no immediate threat now. You glance back to where the bandits were last seen, but there's no sign of them anymore. Your heart's still racing, the adrenaline slowly fading, but you don't have time to relax, not yet. The herd's in disarray, and it's going to take every ounce of energy to get them back in line. The trail boss is already shouting orders to reorganize, his voice cutting through the exhaustion settling into your bones. It's not over. It's never over. The silence after the skirmish hangs heavy in the air, like a breath held too long. You look around, your heart still thumping wildly in your chest, trying to process everything that just happened. The dust swirls in the wind, and the smell of sweat and gunpowder lingers in the air. A few of the men are checking their horses, making sure they're okay after the panic, while others are tending to the wounded. It wasn't much, just a quick confrontation. But the danger felt so much closer than you ever imagined. The reality of what could have happened stares you in the face. The cattle could have been scattered, stolen, or worse, and you could have been left with nothing. Or dead. Dot. The trail boss doesn't seem shaken, though. He's already shouting orders again, his voice cutting through the heavy air. Get the herd moving. We don't have time to waste. The sun's still high. You watch the men around you as they begin to work quickly, falling into a rhythm, falling back into their jobs. It's like muscle memory. The chaos is over, and now it's just another day of the trail. You follow the boss's orders, slowly guiding the herd back together, pushing them forward, getting them moving again. But that uneasy feeling sticks with you, like a weight pressing on your chest. There's a gnawing sense of foreboding that refuses to leave. You've seen enough to know that the road ahead isn't going to be smooth. It never is. The trail boss rides up alongside you, his eyes scanning the herd, his hands resting lightly on the reins. You can tell he's thinking, weighing the odds. The last attack may have been a warning shot, but you both know it won't be the last one. Those were just a few small-time rustlers, he says, his voice low and grim. But there's worse out here. We need to stay sharp. There's no guarantee we'll make it to the next station without a fight. You nod, though there's nothing you can say to that. You've seen enough of the West to know how brutal it can be. The law is far away out here, and it's every man for himself when things get rough. The worst part is knowing that the trail never gets easier, even after a near miss like this. It's always going to be a fight. You turn your attention back to the cattle. They're spooked, jittery, and it's a struggle to get them back on track. The sun beats down on you, and you can feel your energy draining with every step you take. But there's no time for fatigue. There's only the next task. A few miles later, you notice the landscape beginning to change. The dry, rocky terrain starts to give way to a more arid desert, the occasional cactus breaking up the monotony. The air smells different now, with a faint scent of sagebrush and dust mixing with the sharp tang of sweat on your skin. It's a reminder that the trail is long and the ride is far from over, but for a moment there's a quiet calm. The herd has settled into a slower, more even pace. The bandits, for now, are gone, and you can't help but feel a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, you'll make it through this dot. But hope is short-lived. From out of nowhere, a rider appears on the horizon, kicking up a trail of dust behind him as he moves toward you fast. The trail boss doesn't miss a beat. His hand moves instinctively to his rifle as he watches the rider draw nearer. You glance around, your instincts flaring up again, ready for whatever comes next. The rider's a lone figure, moving swiftly but carefully, eyes scanning the land around him as he approaches. You can tell by the way he's riding that he's not one of your crew. He's a stranger. And in these parts, strangers are either saviors or trouble. The man finally draws close enough for you to get a better look. His face is weathered, eyes squinting against the sun, and his horse looks just as worn out as the man himself. His clothes are faded, and you can tell he's been riding for days. As he nears, he raises his hand in a gesture of peace, though it's a little too late to trust Dot. The trail boss is already sizing him up, his hand still on his rifle. "What do you want?" he calls, his voice steady but filled with suspicion. The rider slows, his horse snorting as it stops beside you. He lifts his head, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "I'm looking for a place to rest," he says, his voice dry. "Been riding hard for days? You folks seen any water around here?" The trail boss studies him for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Water's a few miles ahead, near the next bend," he says, his tone still cautious. "But you're gonna have to keep moving after that. We've got cattle to drive." The stranger doesn't seem to mind. He just nods, looking toward the herd before his eyes shift back to the trail boss. "I don't mean any trouble," he adds, a weary smile pulling at his lips. "Just need a little rest." The trail boss grunts, not exactly convinced, but he doesn't push. There's a silent understanding between the two of them, a kind of uneasy truce formed under the harsh desert sun. You can't shake the feeling, though, that this encounter, this brief moment of calm, is nothing more than another step in the unpredictable world of the trail. Rest for a few, but keep your distance from the herd, the trail boss warns before giving a subtle nod and nudging his horse forward. The stranger mutters a quick thanks before guiding his horse a little further down the trail, out of the way of the herd. You watch him disappear into the distance, the dust swirling around him like a ghost. It's hard to shake the feeling that there's more to him than he's letting on. But for now, you have no choice but to keep moving, to keep pushing forward. There's no time for second guessing. Out here, in the heat and the dust, you can't afford to lose focus. You know that danger is always just around the corner, whether it's a bandit, a stray cow, or something else entirely. You urge your horse forward again, back into the steady pace of the herd. The land stretches out before you, endless and unyielding, and the only thing that matters now is the next step. Dot. You keep riding, and you keep breathing. The stranger's presence lingers in the back of your mind, but you push it aside. You don't have the luxury of wondering about someone else's motives when the herd needs your attention. The trail is long, and the cattle are still uneasy after the bandit scare. Their eyes are wide, their movements jerky, and every few minutes you catch one trying to stray off course. You nudge your horse forward again, keeping them together, as the trail boss directs everyone into their roles. The heat is relentless now. The sun directly overhead, turning the land into a furnace. The wind has died down, leaving behind a suffocating, heavy air. The sweat on your brow is trickling down your face in steady streams, soaking into your shirt, but you don't stop. You can't. Every step is measured, every movement deliberate, because the last thing you want is a stampede in this heat. But the journey is starting to get to everyone. The men around you are silent, some of them looking more worn by the hour. They've been on this trail for weeks, and even the toughest of cowboys are feeling the strain. The horses are no better, their coats slick with sweat, their legs moving stiffly as they carry the burden of this endless ride. You glance at the horizon, and something catches your eye. It's not the heat waves rising from the earth, not the cattle, but the land itself. It seems to stretch forever, a vast, unbroken sea of desert and rock. There's nothing else, no shade, no sign of life, just the empty desert. The vastness of it is overwhelming, and for a moment the weight of this journey presses on you in a way it hasn't before. It's easy to forget that the world is bigger than this trail, but standing there now, you remember that this trail is just one thread in the fabric of a much larger, more complex world. And for you, right now, it's all-consuming. A shout from the trail boss snaps you back to attention. Watch the rear. Keep your eyes sharp. You glance over your shoulder and see the men riding behind, scanning the desert behind them, alert for any sign of movement. The bandits could be waiting for another chance, or there could be something else. An animal, a rogue cow. Anything that could break the delicate balance you've managed to maintain. Dot, you can finally rest. Good night. Sweet dreams.